computer. All right, everyone. Thanks for getting on. It's always nice seeing you guys' face on Thursdays. We always have a more intimate group, so it's pretty cool. Um, I want to talk a little bit about comparison today. And so I think it was Theodore Roosevelt said, comparison is the thief of joy. But is it really? So I want you guys to hear me out on this as I um, agree with Theodore in many ways. I also have to disagree with him, and I'll share some personal experience about why I don't believe comparison has to be the thief of joy and how much that revolves around mindset. So comparison, so only if you have a problem in knowing that someone is doing better than you, that makes comparison a problem. When we personally have an issue with it. So I want to talk a little bit about how you can stop the negative comparison and why basically you're wasting your time. But then I also want to talk to you guys about how you can turn comparison into inspiration to become a better person and get better results. So when I first started my unique business, it was May in 2014. So it was a little over 3 years ago. And I used comparison of my uplines all the time. I wanted to know how much she was earning. I wanted to know how many people they were sponsoring. I wanted to know how big their team size were, how much their team was growing. I wanted everything that I knew. What was she doing? What was she posting? What she was saying? Because I wanted to compare myself. I used that comparison for a benchmark because I knew if she could do it, why couldn't I do it or learn to do it or get better at those things that she's good at? So I would always hear people say comparison's the thief of joy, but in those cases it wasn't. It made me a better person. But it wasn't always that way. I also recognized at a really, really young age that I would be comparing myself to my brother. So I'm a middle child. I have an older brother who is just right 2 years older than me. And then my younger brother is right at 2 years. So I have an older brother, and then my younger brother's right at 2 years also. And I compare to myself to them all the time. And there's so many different factors. I was older than my younger brother, so there was that age difference that made me sometimes better at things than him. But then there were times that he was better at things than me, and I would compare myself and I didn't like it. But, there's also the gender factor. I'm the girl, they're the boy. Boys can do certain things better than girls. So I recognized and caught myself at a really young age comparing myself to my brothers, and I hated how it made me feel. I mean, there was just certain things that I could never outperform them at, ever. Like arm wrestling, for example. Like I remember for a short period of time, I could beat my younger brother. That small window lasted when I was 7, probably, and never since. And I never will be able to beat him at arm wrestling. So there's sometimes that things matter, and you just have to accept that comparing yourself to arm wrestling to your brothers, like you won't ever be that good, right? So you can't let it get you down, and it can't get to your mindset. So I caught that on really, really young, that I didn't like how it made me feel when I compared myself to my brothers, when there were so many underlying factors that would never make me better than them. So here's some things that I want you to know also about comparison. One is it's unfair. We typically compare our worst performance, our worst behavior, our worst at other people's bests, right? And so comparison's always, in that aspect, going to be unfair. Us individuals, we have certain gifts, we have certain talents, successes, and things that we can contribute, even like values that are unique to me versus unique to you. So if I'm comparing something that you're naturally born gifted at to something that I am not at, like it's not fair, right? And then the other thing about comparison when looking at it as a negative thing is you're putting focus on the wrong person, because you can't control, like my brothers, like they would always be doing push-ups. I would never be doing push-ups. And so by me pouting about never winning at arm wrestling to watching them do stuff that I'm not willing to do, that those things, I was focusing on not what would get me to be better, but focusing on what they were doing and why they were better. So it was like making that excuse. So I was focusing on them instead of myself. If I would have been comparing and focusing on myself, I would have done the push-ups and I would have grown. Just like when I was comparing myself to my upline, I was comparing myself to them, but the focus was now on me. How can I grow? And in the negative aspect of that, I was watching my brothers do push-up, always beating me at arm wrestling, and me being like, well, I'll never be that good, making it a negative thing and taking the fun out of actually just having the arm wrestle competition. By nod of heads, are you picking up what I'm throwing down? All right, I see some of you nodding your head. Some of you don't have video on. Alicia Purdy's in the house. What's up, girl? I see you. Erica Hall's on here. Totally freaking sweet. I'm glad you guys all showed up. We're always here 10:30 on Thursdays, and then the Tuesday night one, you guys know, is always jam-packed. Those are at 9 p.m. on Tuesdays on Eastern time. So let's carry on about comparisons, how they can be negative and how they can be positive. So you can compare and you can add value to your life, or you can compare and it be meaningless, unfulfilling. And that's when Theodore Roosevelt says comparison's the thief of joy. If you allow it and you're not recognizing and making the shift and making the spin on your mindset. Let's see. Let's talk about, I guess, a few tips to stop comparing yourself to others. If you're using it as a negative comparison, if you're not using it to grow yourself, let's talk a little bit about some things that you can do to stop them. So competition. Let's talk about a little bit about competition. Like, there is always time for it. Being the middle child and being the only girl, we had a lot of competition in our house. But sometimes that competition led to me and my brothers actually like physically fighting, and then getting in trouble, and then not having fun anymore about this game that should have been fun because we were focused on who's going to be the fastest, who won, who. And there's always a time for competition. But if it's taking the joy out of it because you're comparing too much about who won and who's the fastest, just start to recognize things like that. When competition makes the activity not fun anymore is when you're using it as a negative thing. But if you are in a competition and you're comparing yourself, okay, the top girl, she's brought in 20 people to be in the sandcastle building contest. She's put in 20. I'm at 10. I'm comparing myself to her, right? To her numbers, and to creating a benchmark and using it as, okay, if she can do it, I can do it. So do you see how that comparison is different? Therefore, it made me work harder. It fueled my self-belief and confidence than to compete and to compare and to chase her. So using it as a driving force. Recognize when you do that also, because there's times that you guys do that in your daily life, but you're not recognizing it as a positive comparison. So just start to kind of be aware of when comparison is happening, and what are you letting it do to your mindset? Is it fueling you to grow, or is it hindering you? Is it being unfulfilling? Is it being something negative? Some other things, I remember being younger also and sucking that I hated that I didn't measure up, but but I'm grateful for that now, because it's also huge reason that I like to outperform and I perform at a high rank is because being being the middle, being the girl, there was just times that I just didn't measure up to what I was trying to do. That my time wasn't as fast as my brothers, or I couldn't do as many pull-ups. And so instead of measuring the gap, like me and my brother did 10 more pull-ups than I did, instead of measuring the gap, I would say, well, next time we compete, I'm going to do 11 instead of my 10. So then I'm only 9 away from them. I'm only 8 away from them. So measuring the gain instead of the gap when you are using comparison as a benchmark and a comparison to grow yourself. So just remember that, measure the gain, not the gap. And when I started measuring the growth instead of my shortcomings, it definitely was a motivator. It built my confidence. It built my self-belief. And in return, it's built a huge empire. It's built, this is my second business. I was a salon owner. And I think that's probably about when it started, when I started really working smarter and not harder and learning about benchmarks and about comparison, because I always had heard it's the thief of joy. And so I think that's really it. I've got a bunch of jumbled notes over here, and I think that I kind of covered on everything, but celebrating your wins and the little wins, because it's the little things that make a big difference. Find inspiration when you do catch yourself comparing. Recognize it, stop it, and say, how can I use this to inspire me instead of hindering me? And then just remember, if you want to compare yourself to yourself and just grow a little bit every single day. So let's open up the mic. I know some of you are at work, but we can kind of open this up. If you guys want to add to anything I said, or if you have questions that have to do with anything else, we can use this time for you guys. You have to unmute yourself because you are muted. Jordan, do you have anything to add, or like a takeaway, or like, oh, that made sense, or tell me more about this? Oh, you're muted. Hold on, I can unmute you. Okay, you're good. Jordan.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. What was your kind of like your biggest takeaway or aha moment? Let's talk a little bit. Let's just have an open conversation about that.
I just got on.
Oh, did you? Okay. Well, that doesn't work.
I was my niece's hair for school.
Oh, cool. Okay. Anybody else want to add to or share what was their biggest takeaway, or what is something that was like, oh, that made sense? No one? Tasha, you're always wise beyond your years.
I'm sorry, I'm multitasking and doing this right now.
It's all good. Who else is on here? Alicia Purdy? You're muted.
I think for me, like when I first was beginning, and I've been in this 3 years, and there are times when I have people surpass me, who start after me, who've hit black, and those moments when you're in that frustration, if, like you said, you start measuring the gap and you start doubting yourself, if you go into a downward spiral. And then when I'm in those positions, I then watch my team go in the downward spiral. So, like you said, measure the gain, measure the things I have done, and focus on my growth and where I'm going, and know that my journey is going to be different than everyone else. And I'm going to get there as long as I keep pushing forward, getting uncomfortable, and doing the things and helping other people. And I think the more that we also, instead of worrying about our lack of what we have accomplished or what everyone else is doing, helping other people, focusing on your team, focusing on how to get them there. And I think when you're that altruistic behavior, then pumps yourself up. So when you're feeling down and you're feeling like you're comparing yourself, 1, go to your upline. to go read something to pump yourself up, like Les Brown or Eric Thomas, and then go and help someone in your team to get where they need to be. And when I do that, it totally lifts my mood. And then I'm like, aha, got it. That was a down moment. Back up on the up and up and keep pressing on. You'll all get there if you keep doing it, keep growing, keep doing more than you think it takes to get there. It's all going to happen.
I love that. Yep. You are on it for sure. I see a lot. I see that a lot. You have mentioned, people starting after you who hit the top quicker than you, or whatever. And I see that a lot in our organization or our company, and I think it's a normal reaction. I think it's a natural human instinct to feel that to have the joy taken from you by comparing in that way. And I see it so often. But one thing that I also have heard a lot is they think, a lot of people think it's unrealistic. So a lot of my prospects think it's unrealistic because, I hit the top of the company really quick, but I was in the beauty industry for a long time. For 11 years, I owned a salon. I started when I was 19. And so what people on our team don't see, so my prospects see that, but what people on the team don't see is that I owned a salon for 11 years before I started Younique. So I already came out of the beauty industry. So they're like, oh, she at the top of the company in 7 months. I've been in 7 months and I'm still yellow. And so they let it steal their joy, but they don't know, they're comparing their beginning to my now 14 years ago where I started. A lot of you are just starting businesses for the first time, or you're just now getting into the beauty industry. So don't compare your beginning to somebody's year 14 in business, or their third year, because everyone's at different starting points and has different circumstances. So all right, is that all? Anyone else want to add anything? Erica, I'm glad that you got on here, girl. And Maria's in the house. Terry, oh my goodness, you beautiful women. Love it. So all right, I'm gonna get off here. Got work to do. How many of you, by a show of hands or nods, are using Teamzy? Teamzy. I saw some bright eyes.
I downloaded it.
Hey, that's the start.
One step closer.
That is a start. It's the bomb. So how many of you have gotten your Empower or your Uplift necklaces in? Dude, it's so cool. It's really heavy. I was shocked.
And it's long.
Yeah.
It's like a dangle one. I thought it was going to be a short one, and I opened it up last night. I was like, this is exactly what I've been wanting.
Yeah, it's so cool. So I'm a couple duos away from the Empower one. Oh, pretty cool. All right, ladies. I hope you all have a good day. Enjoy your weekend. And get your team on next time. And I'll talk to you guys soon.